Selling Online Today, featuring Chris from MyBadgeApp.
Don't try and make tons of money from the outset because it's not going to happen. Be prepared to be looking at something quite small and not necessarily all that profitable to begin with, and just stick at it.
Making a great living by selling online is possible if you know who to turn to for help. Welcome to Selling Online Today, the show that features the winners of the online sales world sharing their stories of domination of eBay, Amazon, or their own sites. Here's your host, Patrick Conlin.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Selling Online Today, the show that brings you everything you need to know to successfully sell online in today's changing environment. Well, we are just thrilled today to have with us Chris. And Chris has a very interesting e-commerce business, and I'm just looking at it here. At least I'm looking at the eBay end of his business, and it's Chris Swansea is his name, and it's MyBadgeApp as the name of the store. So I'm not going to do anything else. I'm just going to hand it right over to Chris to just fill us in a little bit about how you got into this very niche area of badges.
Well, it was kind of by accident, really. I sort of started on eBay just trying to sort of supplement my income when I was working full-time, selling odds and ends. Actually, it started off by popping into the pound shops and just having a look to see if there was anything on the shelves which looked worth more than £1. But obviously, that was only just for a tiny bit of pocket money, really. And then one day, my wife actually just suggested, why don't you start making something? Because the overheads obviously are a lot cheaper than buying ready-made products. So got thinking and thought about what would be something that's actually fairly cheap to make, also cheap to sell, but if you sell enough of them, could actually turn sort of a fairly healthy profit. And we sort of come to the idea of badges. Originally, it was just purely badges, and popped onto eBay to have a look at what was what, and just went from there, really. Purchased a badge-making machine for £100.
Wow.
A few bits and pieces to make them, yeah, and it started off quite small, sort of come home from work, do like an hour's work after getting home, and then it sort of took off, really, quite slowly at first, but, month on month it was getting busier and busier. Added a few more extra things, such as key rings and fridge magnets and photo clocks and such like, and then eventually it got to the point where it was too busy to do the two jobs side by side, so just took it on a full-time job, basically.
It is fascinating, and for our listeners who aren't actually sitting in front of the computer at the moment, I'm looking at 23,441 pieces of feedback. So that is obviously built up over time. It seems even just from your feedback that you're averaging close to 1,000 feedbacks a month, which not everyone obviously goes in and leaves feedback on an eBay store right away. So that's a lot of work. That's a lot of picking and packing. Is this something that you do yourself, or do you have other people helping you?
Actually, I just do it all myself. Just by pure luck, I think it's managed to sort of get to a stage where I've always been chasing the hours in the day. And whenever it's got to a point where it looks like I don't have enough time to do it by myself, I've managed to sort of find a way of time saving. So I've managed to keep it just me at the moment, though, like I say, from an hour a day, it now is roughly 7:30 in the morning till about 5 o'clock in the evening, 5 days a week, and then a little bit at weekends too. So it is just me at the moment, but, if it gets much busier, I probably would have to actually look at getting some help.
So when exactly did you start? Would it be 3 or 4 years ago, did you say before? You didn't actually tell us how long you've been actually in the business of selling online. Is it more than a year at this stage?
Oh yes, yeah. Actually, sorry, did I? The eBay page will show that I've been a member since 2005, but I didn't actually start doing this particular business until the start of 2012. So it's just coming up 3.5 years now, and it was a sort of standalone job since about, I think, May 2013. So I've been doing it just purely this job as a job for about 2 years now.
Well, that's pretty impressive for such a short amount of time. And you do have a lot of different things going on here. So I can imagine your brain many times is bursting with different ideas in order to be able to create all different types of custom badges and for animals and pets and gaming. And I see a lot of different categories here. So it is amazing how such a niche area can actually be so full of different categories. At Selling Online Today, we interview people all the time, and we love speaking to business owners who have niched down to very particular areas, because as far as I can see, that seems to be the best way forward, because if you're targeting everyone, you're targeting nobody. I don't know if you agree with that or how you see it.
I've tried not to be too... I know I've got a lot of categories, for example, of badges, but I've tried not to be too broad, because I thought that, once it gets to a certain stage, it would be too confusing for people to actually sort of choose a design or actually look for what they want. I found that some of the eBay shops are too big, and I don't even know what they're selling. There's just too much stuff going on.
Yes.
So I've sort of tried to stay within certain categories, for example, and then just expand within those categories. So, like a certain theme, and then just, once you're in that part of the shop, then you know what you're looking for, and there's just dozens and dozens of designs. But I've tried to keep the actual number of different themes as low as possible, just so it doesn't sort of baffle people, because, it's supposed to be quite a quick process going onto eBay looking for a badge and then buying it and then coming out again. And, if you spend all your time trying to look for what you're looking for, you might end up giving up in the end. So I try to keep it simple, or as simple as possible anyway.
And so you have done. Is eBay your only e-commerce outlet, or have you ventured into the world of Amazon or your own site just yet?
Well, I have looked at Amazon, and I have had offers from people to build a website. I did sort of dabble with a website, actually, when I first started, but I found that it was getting next to no sort of attention, though that may have been down to me not actually sort of advertising all that much. But I thought to myself that if I was going to go onto the internet and want to spend, £1.50 on a pin badge, I wouldn't want to spend all day trawling Google or anything for that, so I would just go straight to eBay. So at the moment, that's still my only place I sell, but it's been good to me so far, so I haven't had any sort of major urge to change that as yet. But yeah, I think that's the main place. I've done a bit of research. I've had a look on the shops on Amazon, and I found that the same people who sell on eBay who also sell on Amazon sell a great deal less on Amazon. So for the amount of sort of effort to double my shop over to there, I'm not sure it would be totally worth for the returns,
Yeah, well, it's certainly an interesting theme. I tend to work a lot with businesses who are in the multi-channel arena, so they actually are putting all of their stock onto eBay and onto Amazon and onto their website all at the same time, and all synchronized, because with so many different things going on, it certainly is a nightmare if you don't have it all interlinked in some shape or form. And ultimately, that's an interesting goal if we know that the people are shopping there, because there, as you said, you thought, well, where would I go to buy a badge? I'll just go to eBay. And there's a lot of people who would say, well, I'll just go to Amazon, or there are even some people who just go on to Google. But there is a misconception out there that, there's 15% commission going to eBay, there's 15% commission going to Amazon. But if you do have a website, you also have to invest in advertising it in some shape or form, because a lot of people just start a website and hope that sales are just going to roll in, and that doesn't happen. And many do end up getting quite disillusioned from the offset after having spent quite a lot of money. So it is something certainly to bear in mind. So you're working by yourself. You've mentioned your wife, so I'm sure she's there for moral support, at least when the going gets tough. Have you had any sort of unexpected orders? Any nice experiences where you've woke up and said, wow, that's amazing?
One that springs to mind is actually sort of fairly recently, actually. Off the top of my head, there may have been others, but the one that's happened most recently was I had quite a large order of personalised fridge magnets I had to send out, and they were going to the RFA Argus, the ship that was sent out to Sierra Leone to sort of help deal with the Ebola problem.
Yeah.
And it was for a crew member and, well, probably about 60 other crew members, because it was about 60 fridge magnets going out there. So yeah, that was quite unusual, because it was current affairs, and it sort of felt involved a little bit in something that was going on in the news, even in a very, very small way. Because when I posted them out, the ship was actually still there. I think it's back now, I'm not sure, but it was still out there at the time. This was about 2 or 3 months ago. So it was quite nice to sort of think that those people down there that were doing that work were
wearing your badges.
Well, it was actually a fridge magnet. I assume it was probably...
Oh, they were fridge magnets, yeah.
Yeah. I assume it was probably going to be stuck, not necessarily on a fridge, but sort of anywhere on...
Metallic, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was quite interesting.
I can understand that you wouldn't have the same sort of headaches as a furniture store, for example, when it comes to posting your items, because they would all be fairly straightforward when it comes to the postage. What about returns? Do you get many returns, or is it pretty straightforward that people get their badge and fridge magics and just like them and hold on to them, or are there a lot of returns to deal with?
No, there's not a lot of returns. Mainly, if I get anything back, it might be because someone's bought by mistake or changed their mind. It's not really a case of they've received it and they don't like it. I mean, if there's ever a problem, like if it doesn't arrive, it gets lost in the mail, things get damaged in the mail occasionally, though not too much actually with these items because they're so small, it's really hard to damage them in the mail. If they contact me, I always send out a free replacement or a refund anyway, so it's just a case of making sure that they're happy, because it's really not worth arguing over something which just cost £2, because the customer feedback's much more important than a couple of quid here or there.
There's a lot of buzz at the moment going around social media and whatnot. Do you use that to help promote your business, or have you found that it's not that useful for you?
Well, I have got a Facebook page. There's a link on the flyers that go out with every product to sort of have a look at it. And I've mainly found that it's friends and friends of friends who have actually liked the page and so on. I haven't got anything on Twitter, but that's just because I'm not a Twitter person. Yes. And there is a social web shop type of thing on the Facebook page, so they can actually buy straight from the Facebook page. Though I've not found any way of actually finding how successful that is, because I don't think there's actually, the one I use, I don't think there's actually a facility to check the amount of traffic that goes through and then buys. But, while the going's good, I see no reason to get rid of it. It's sort of fairly fair priced and everything else. Yeah,
well, there's no doubt about it. It's good for certainly getting the products out there and letting people see what's on offer so that you're in their mind. The Americans would always say people buy when they're ready to buy, not when you're marketing to them. So you have to kind of be in their presence every now and again so as they remember you whenever that moment of wanting to purchase happens. So you mentioned earlier on in the interview that you definitely were entrepreneurial in as much as you were out, you were looking for things to start to sell online. Was this something that you just had, that you knew that e-commerce was the way forward? Or did you feel you just stumbled into it? Or was it something that you had in your back of your mind? Tell us a bit about how you yourself feel about the whole e-commerce arena.
To be perfectly honest with you, it just kind of happened. I think that having been a member on eBay for 7 years previously to when I actually sort of started the business, I had used it just purely for buying odds and ends that you can find in the shops or selling, sort of random objects from the house just to clear space or make a bit of extra money or something like that. It's not something that I'd ever seen myself going into full-time. Like I say, it kind of just happened by itself. If it hadn't taken off and it had all sort of fizzled out, then I wouldn't have been back at the start. I wouldn't have been totally disheartened because I wasn't expecting it to take off quite as much as it has. Now, obviously, it's the sort of main source of income, so it's very important. I do find I'm spending a lot of time on the computer, and to be honest with you, don't like being on the computer as much as I am. I do like to sort of spend some time in the real world. Yes. So I don't do everything online. I do like to take a walk into town and actually visit some real shops. So I'm a bit of both. I like the e-commerce side of things. I think it's important. Obviously, it's the way things are going. But I also do tend to sort of try and keep one foot in sort of the real world and, visit actual physical shops too, see what they're selling, try and actually offer them some of the products too, which has happened in the past. I have been known to sell through a couple of local shops as well.
Yes.
So, it's still quite important to do that.
Yeah, as a business owner, now that you're doing it full-time, what would you say that your biggest strength is to keep the whole business going?
It's got to be time management, I think, really. The orders are coming in, obviously, 24 hours a day, not just from the UK, but around the world anyway. Mm-hmm. So trying to make sure that balancing my own time, which is important, with the time that I spend on the business, I would say is the number one thing, because it's very easy to let it run out of control. If you want to take a day off, that's okay. If you want to go away for a couple of days, you must make sure that you either close the shop or make people aware that you're not there, or plan ahead for when you get back, etc. So if you don't plan your time very well, things will go out late, people will be unhappy, and you will be spending most of your days answering complaints emails instead of actually doing the work, and so on and so forth. So keeping on top of the time, I would say, is the main way of keeping the business running smoothly.
Yes, absolutely. And it's very easy to let it slip if you don't stay on top of it. And in the world, especially in the area of eBay, where they're probably rating more the seller as opposed to the product. If you compare it with Amazon, you'll find a lot of the Amazon feedback, albeit it's only 10% of the people go on to Amazon to do the reviews as such, and they generally tend to review the item more than the seller, whereas on eBay they tend to seem to review more the seller along with the items, and in that sense the prompt delivery and the comments that you get that way can soon turn into negative feedback if they sense that it hasn't been sent out in a timely manner. So I understand where you're coming from there. So it really is something that we must keep on top of all the time. If you had a magic wand for your business, what would you like it to do for you right now?
That's a good question, actually. I would probably say that in the interest of keeping things simple, which is what I like to do, I would have to add maybe, 2 or 3 more hours in the day. That would pretty much be it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not so much what the business could do, but I think it's what I would want to happen for the business, as in have more time to do it. So, if it did get busier, I wouldn't see that as necessarily a negative in every other respect than the income. I would appreciate, obviously, the extra money and the extra business and all that sort of thing. But I think at this stage, if it gets much busier, I will be looking to have to really rethink how I go about doing it. So more time in the day would be my number one wish, if I had to wish for anything in regards to to the shop, that's for sure.
When you're not selling badges on eBay, how do you like to relax or spend your time?
Well, it is obviously going to be mainly away from the computer, because I see the computer more as a work thing now than something to chill out on, like some people do. So it would pretty much be anything that doesn't involve sitting in front of that. So it'd be watching the TV, going out, spending time with the children, going for a drive, trying to get out of the house for any reason,
Do you think the sheer amount of feedback, I just know that there's a huge amount of that practical end of it, of picking and packing the goods and sending them out. Is it something then afterwards that you might consider getting into other areas within eBay, or is this really just your only desire to go down this route of the badges and the fridge magnets, or has it inspired you to look into other areas?
I have looked at other things, and I have dabbled a little bit in other bits and pieces. Came across a few old childhood Lego sets, and that sort of got my mind working about maybe buying and selling in those. That is something which I've done, and found it a little bit time-consuming, to be honest with you. I did go also down another route of buying old metal car hubcaps and turning those into clocks and selling those on, and they all did sell. Again, a little bit on the time-consuming side. So it's always running through my mind, trying to think up new things, but it would have to be something which I could fit around my current job without taking over or getting sort of left by the wayside just purely with a lack of time. This sort of current setup I have at the moment, where it's just me doing the work and selling these particular items, is working very well when it comes to sort of keeping the household running, paying the bills, and having a bit left over. Though I would have to sort of radically change the way I do things, I think, to sort of, if it was ever going to make big bucks, because there's no way that one person can do all this by themselves. So, it might be on the sort of verge of a change like that. I think maybe in the next few months or a couple of years, I would see that happening, if it still continued to grow.
Do you enjoy working for yourself in an e-commerce business, or is it something where days you would wish I had my other job back, or do you really feel that it's the way forward when it comes to entrepreneurship and people? There's a lot of people that are listeners that may even be considering giving up their day job to get into a full-time e-commerce business. So it is good to hear real stories from real people who are actually out there during the day. And what I can sense is that yeah, sometimes it is better to keep it small so that you can earn some money, because some people would start an e-commerce business and then they would bring on one person, then they bring on another person, and before you know it, they actually have too many people and not enough income to actually support the business they're in. So it's a bit like owning a haulage company. You're better being a one-man show and having one lorry and driving it around the country, or having 50 but don't have two. Because once you have two or three of them, then you start to lose money. So it's one of those things that, do you take the next step of getting on to the next level, but with all the heartaches that it brings, or do you keep it small and tight and have a nice lifestyle from it?
That's definitely sort of something that is going through my mind quite often. The pattern of sort of like busy times of year, quiet times of year, and so on and so forth seems to be quite sort of sporadic with this business. There are obviously busy times, say Christmas, and times when a lot of people are doing the same thing, such as sort of sports events or, Eurovision Song Contest, that sort of thing. You tend to sort of see patterns emerge where certain times of year are busier than others. However, when you're in between those times, it's hard to tell how busy you're going to be. And so taking on other people would be, at this stage, something which I would not feel 100% comfortable doing, because I wouldn't necessarily be able to guarantee how busy they would be or how much money I would have set aside to actually pay for them. Because, you can have quite dry spells with this. It's not to the point where, you're worrying, but because obviously you do have busy periods as well that make up for it. But I think if you were hiring somebody, they would want a pretty consistent amount of work to do day to day. And with this particular sort of products, it's not really like that. So it would have to be a lot busier, even to the stage where I was getting the family to help out before I was actually hiring somebody, because I would want the quiet periods to still be busy enough to warrant actually having someone on the books, working for me.
It's the joys of working for yourself. These are the types of things that are running through your head. We're going to wrap it up in a few minutes. Are you a reader of books? Do you read a lot of business books? Is there any you could recommend to our listeners?
I don't really get a lot of time to read these days. That would normally be something I used to do at lunchtimes while I was working. So I don't actually own any. It's all been pretty much, any reading I tend to do tends to be sort of as and when I figure out a question in my head. Pop onto the internet and see if anyone else has asked that question before, and then see what the responses are. Probably all things that have popped up in business books, I would imagine, from time to time, but I've never actually sort of sat down and read one, and I don't own one either. But again, need the time.
You're more of the University of YouTube, or anytime you need to find out something, you pop on there. A bit like myself on many occasions, I must admit. So finally, what advice would you give to someone who's thinking of starting an e-commerce business?
Well, firstly, I would say, don't necessarily expect it to work, because I never had a plan from the beginning. I would say there's a certain amount of luck involved. For example, I think the one thing that went through my mind at the time was the only way I'm going to get noticed is if I undercut people with price, because, there's a lot of things out there that I sell that are very similar to what other people sell. I mean, badges are badges, aren't they, really? So I would say, to start with, don't try and make tons of money from the outset, because it's not going to happen. Be prepared to be looking at something quite small and not necessarily all that profitable to begin with, and just stick at it. Because if it's something that people want, then they will start coming in trickles, and then if it's successful enough, then it will work. So just not to try it for a couple of months and then give up if it doesn't look like it's working. And also not to throw too much money at it to begin with either, because it needs to grow. There's scales and what not to sort of try and think about. So to take it slow to begin with, because it's already a big marketplace online. It's not like it used to be, where I think that if you started with something good, it would suddenly explode. I think that there's so many out there now that you've got to expect it to be a slow start.
Yes. They're definitely words of wisdom, because I was told many years ago, yes, don't create a huge, big business structure and not actually have any sales. You're better starting off slowly and growing the business organically, which is exactly what you have said. And the structures will create themselves, so to speak. And that's really important, especially for those people who are thinking of starting their own business. You get a lot of people think, oh, I got to spend all this money on a website, all this money on stock, all this money doing this and that. And as you said at the beginning of the show, you bought your machine for a couple of £100 and started building it little by little. And, you know, you have an awful lot of credibility in front of me when you're sitting there and I see that you must be doing in and around at least 1,000 sales a month just by the amount of feedback that you have. So I really, really wish you the best of luck in the months ahead and in the years ahead, Chris. And hopefully you'll keep an eye on our show at sellingonlinetoday.com. We do have lots of resources that we are constantly updating for small business owners like yourself to try and make your life a little bit easier because of the fact that we many times are a one-man job. So I really appreciate you taking the time out today to chat to us, and I know it will have been very inspiring for everyone. So just remind us if anyone wanted to get in contact with you, have you an email address or is there a Facebook page that we can find you at? I know that if they go on to Google and put eBay MyBadgeApp, your store will come up and they'll be able to have a rummage around. But if anyone wanted to touch base with you personally, how could they get in touch?
Basically, if they wanted to find me on Facebook, then they would need to just basically search for My Badge, which is all one word, and then they would come across the page for the shop, which also has a link to the shop, like I say, and they can drop me a message there. Otherwise, they can get through to me on my personal email, which is Chris Swansea, so name Chris, then the town Swansea, all one word, the number 3, at hotmail.co.uk, so chrisswansea3@hotmail.co.uk. That's a good place for people to either write to me and ask me questions about it or send me designs as well, because a lot of people use their own designs on the items too. So
brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Chris, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you today, and I'm sure we'll catch you again.
Yes, yeah, me too. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for speaking to me.
Thank you. No problem. Bye-bye.
Take the time right now to go to sellingonlinetoday.com and gain instant access to tons of free resources to help you in your online selling journey. We'll see you next time on Selling Online Today.